This podcast is brought to you by Customplan Financial Advisors, Inc., an independent insurance managing general agency in Canada. Financialpodcast.ca was developed with one goal in mind: to educate Canadians on important topics that affect their financial well-being and make it readily available to all. We welcome you to plug in and learn with us. If you have questions, please email us at contact@financialpodcast.ca.
Hello and welcome to the Financial Podcast. My name is Gary Poyer. The Financial Podcast is brought to you by Customplan Financial Advisors, an award-winning managing general agency that provides exceptional support and resources to the independent financial advisor. Please visit customplanfinancial.com to see all the resources that are available to you as the independent financial advisor. Today, we'll be focusing our discussion on the topic of success and what it is that makes a person successful. And we're extremely happy to have with us today the founder of Wealth Strategy Group, John Askin. John, please tell us about yourself.
Well, good morning, Gary. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. I think it's a very important topic in terms of, I know I always ask clients, I have the great fortune of working with a lot of successful people. And one of the questions I always like to ask is, what do you think are the most important things for being successful in business and in life? And it's fascinating to hear some of the answers I get from those people. So I think it's a very important discussion. And a little bit about myself. So I grew up on the farm in central Alberta, and I had my own law firm in Alberta for almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. I had a specialized tax estate planning practice, did a lot of work with corporate reorganizations, succession planning, estate planning, and did a fair amount of tax litigation, litigated up to the Federal Court of Appeal level. And then in 1995, I got an offer I couldn't refuse from a major financial institution that got me out to Vancouver. And I was ready for a change for a number of reasons. And so that was great. And it was a great experience. And then what I know about me, I'm more of a builder and a creator than a manager. So when we created this national tax and estate planning group, and once it was up and running, it was time for me to move on. So I left that very nice job with a very good income. I took about a year and a half, wrote a book, founded the Wealth Strategy Group, and I really saw a tremendous unmet need in the marketplace at that time. This was 1998, 1999, to specialize in developing exit transition plans for successful business owners and wealthy families. Been doing it ever since.
Okay. And what is it that the Wealth Strategy Group actually does?
Well, we specialize in, who we are, let's start with that. We're an independent team of legal, tax, accounting, insurance, financial, and planning experts. And as I said, we specialize in designing, implementing, and ongoingly servicing comprehensive, integrated exit, transition, and life plans for successful business owners and multifamilies.
Okay. Well, it sounds very interesting, and sounds like there's a huge need for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if you look at statistics, Gary, and these have been the same ever since I've been around, which is since trees have been little. But, going back to even 40, 50 years, it's still the same today. 80% of successful business owners have no formal plan in place to transition or exit from their business on either a voluntary or involuntary basis. And as we all know, the probability of exiting any business is always one. You're either going to walk out or go feet first. It's just a matter of when and how. Yeah. But yet 80% still haven't done anything.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, and I think there's several reasons for it. First of all, we believe in the Wealth Strategy Group that people take action when they know why, not so much how. Not that there's anything wrong with how, but so many advisors in the professional advisor community, when they start talking to clients, they start talking about how to do things. And they go into these complicated often tax-driven transactions. And without really focusing on the why. There's nothing wrong with how, it's just that until people understand why, they're not motivated to take action. So I think that is one of the big factors. Also, I think in the traditional estate planning model, which has tended to focus on legal, tax, accounting, insurance, financial aspects, there are a number of things which have not been properly or are not being properly addressed or adequately addressed. And there are some things not being addressed at all. And that goes into the whole topic of life planning for clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, John, some people follow in their father or their mother's footsteps and enter, excuse me, the profession that their father or mother were in. And other people enter a profession because they see it as a natural fit or a calling. How did you end up in the legal profession?
It's very simple. As I said, I grew up on the farm, and I had the great opportunity to spend time with my father. He loved talking to his children. And we had a fairly large family. We would sit out on the front porch at night at the end of the day, and we'd have conversations. And I might have been maybe about 5 years old or so, and I just remember it so clearly. We were sitting on the porch, and I was on a step down, and my father was a step up from me sitting. And he was asking me about, well, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, well, I grew up in an era when the space race was just getting going, and we were just starting to put people in orbit and hadn't got to the moon yet or anything like that. But I said, well, geez, maybe I just want to be an astronaut. I was about 5 or 6 years old, and this sounded really great, or I don't know, a fireman or something. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? He said, you are a really good talker. He said, and the family needs a lawyer. I think you're going to be a lawyer. and honest to God, that's in those days when your parents said to do something, you did. That's what you did. And I was, so as I was about 5 or 6 years old, that was I just knew that, okay, well, I'm going to be a lawyer because my dad said so.
Yeah, that's cute. So
it's the truth. Like I say, it's just the way it happened, and I just remember it so clearly. And my whole life then got oriented around doing that.
Yeah, it's funny because your life was determined almost by that event or that conversation.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. And my father, he had not just with that conversation but throughout my life until the time of his passing, had a huge impact on me and was probably my most important and valuable mentor.
Very interesting. Yeah. So when you first started out in the legal profession, you've gone through law school. Did you consciously think on yourself or talk to your dad about your career, about how you wanted it to unfold?
We had many conversations about it, and my father, he never had I think he completed high school and some years at a community college. He was a very intelligent man, but in those days, there were just opportunities to go to university or anything like that. And he always had a fascination with income tax. In fact, in his spare time, this was after we moved off the farm and we were in the city, but he actually prepared tax returns for friends and family members. And I don't know how old you are, Gary, but back in those days, we had these little wooden desks in the classrooms with either a right or a left arm, and they were very nice. Out a little drawer you pulled out underneath and places to put your pens and pencils on top. Well, they were selling some off at our school. So he brought home one of these little wooden desks. He had an office at home, and I would sit in the corner of his office, and he'd be working away, and he'd be doing tax returns, and I'd be sitting there and I'd be doing my homework, but I'd be asking him, well, what are you doing? I don't know. I was maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. And that was sort of because he was interested, I was interested. So it goes back to him being a mentor. And so I developed an interest in taxation probably, I don't know, I can remember maybe 10, 12 years old.
That's kind of interesting. It's kind of a bit of a dry subject, mind you, but
I don't know. It's as John Kennedy said, it's either a problem to be solved or maybe a mystery to be enjoyed. And that's how I've always approached the area, because it really is. It's a mystery, and there's a lot of opportunities for creativity.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's very true. Did you or your dad helping you set goals for yourself, like either short-term or lifelong goals?
All of the above, absolutely. And as I said, he was a big mentor of mine. And we talked about university and what I was going to take university. So what would prepare me best for a career in law, and in particular taxation? So we thought about that and talked about that, and we said, okay, so I should go to business school. So I went and pursued a commerce degree, and that was the first degree I obtained. But that was always just the stepping stone to then taking what I'd learned and being able to apply it in the area of taxation and tax law. So then I went to law school, and I did pretty much every program that I could possibly take in the area of taxation and estate planning. I worked with professors and did supplementary research work for them and tax policy. And when I was going to law school at Osgoode Hall in Toronto, I just kept working in the field and found it more and more interesting the more I got into it.
Okay. You said something that to my way of thinking really helps a person become successful. And that is, you referred to your dad as a mentor, and you're talking to your professors. So not only are you learning from the books, you're learning from actual people that you view as being successful as well. So how important are mentors to you?
They're absolutely critical. I mean, and I don't know how else to say it. They are maybe the most important thing, because, and I also learned this, not only mentors in an academic or business sense, but I also had the opportunity to play sports, particularly hockey and football, at a pretty high level through university. And along the way had some great coaches. And the coaches that I really remember the most are not the ones that just taught you the skills about hockey or about football, but about life. And what it takes to be successful on the football field or on the hockey rink are very translatable into what it takes to be successful in life, in terms of hard work, perseverance, stickability, not giving up, no matter what. And so coaching, mentoring, and that's, I have a number of coaches and mentors to this day. And I'm I'm always looking for more, because it's so much easier to learn. They navigated their way through the jungle than trying to find my own way through it. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, why not talk to somebody that's already been there and done it and has learned from their experiences? So that's great. I think that's just such a key attribute of success that you mentioned here with mentoring. Okay, John, I've heard a lot of different definitions when it comes to the meaning of success, but how do you define success?
I would say that success for me is every day having the opportunity to pursue and fulfill my purpose in life and have fun doing it. And the source of that comes from living a life by my own design, which was another thing my father talked to me a lot about in terms of being in business for myself. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be in business for themselves, or that's the only way you'll be successful. No, it just, for me, became very clear early on in life that controlling my own destiny and having the ability to decide what I was going to do, when and how I was going to do it, was absolutely essential to me. And then from there, I could design a life around pursuing and fulfilling my purpose and again, having fun doing it every day.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're identifying is the power of your own mind, right? The power of thought, and being willing to use that gift that we have compared to a lot of other animals. They can't think the way that we do, and like, have you always been that way, like thinking about what it is you want, even when you were a kid?
Yes. Yeah, it was whether it was the next level of hockey I wanted to play at, or the next level of football I wanted to play at, or what I wanted to accomplish academically, or what university I was going to go to, or what law school I was going to go to, which firm I was going to article with. It was just, I could go back and look at the whole thing, and it was all about having a clear design for the future and pursuing it. And as I said, I think it is really important along the way to have fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, we're not here for a very long time. And near as I can tell, when we're gone for a very long time. So we may as well enjoy the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than being a real, like a person that thinks, what else about yourself do you think has made you successful? Is there one other attribute or several other attributes that come to mind?
Well, there's a couple, Jerry, and I think, and it's not just me. And as I said earlier on, I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with a lot of really successful people in a number of different fields in terms of the clients we work with and the families. And I always like to ask them that question about, what do you think is the most important thing that's contributed to your success? And there's, without a doubt, the number one criteria, way ahead of intelligence or family that you had, or contacts. The number one thing was determination and not quitting. That was the number one thing that was always fed back to me by almost all of the people I talked to. And that's really how I've been all of my life. Is I don't give up very easily on anything. And maybe sometimes to a fault. I mean, I don't know, but I really think that's critically important, because it doesn't matter what field of endeavor you're going into, there are going to be detours, speed bumps, roadblocks along the way. There's going to be ups and downs, and you have to be willing and able to stick with it, to be successful, to be committed to where you're going. And I think relationship to failure is a really important thing. I've always viewed failure as, there's never losses, only lessons. What can I learn and take away from this? I've successfully identified something that didn't work. That gets me closer to what's going to work.
Right.
And also resiliency, the ability to come back. I mean, I've had some major lows and major highs in my life. And that's the other thing I think too, Gary, is that, as I can tell, the only thing that is ever certain in life is that it's uncertain. And so there's no point trying to pursue this, normality, or I got to hang on to this or that or whatever. No, because it's things change, whether it's personal, whether it's health, whether it's business, whether it's the economy, whether it's pandemics. It doesn't matter. There's always something. And so I think it's important to be able to develop an attitude towards change as being something positive, as to what are the opportunities here. Okay. And being able to, first of all, accept that there's change happening, and then what are the opportunities that arise out of that. Right now, we're talking on Zoom. 5 years ago, how many people were talking on Zoom?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody doesn't know. I mean, it's revolutionized the whole way we carry on business and communicate. And yeah, I'm not saying that again, we have to not say, well, this is the answer. No, because there's still times when I think face-to-face meetings are are necessary. But, there's an example. So things are changing every day, every minute, every hour.
Yeah.
And that's circling back to what we talked about with taxation, and where I find the fascination of it is that, if you look at budgets, technical amendments, press releases, advance rulings, interpretation bulletins, court decisions, it's changing on pretty much a daily basis. And every time there's a change, there's an opportunity. Every time there's a change, there's an opening. And that whole game of, okay, then this happened here, then how do we respond to that? And how do we respond to this? I just find that very fascinating.
Yeah, sounds like it. And it sounds to me like you have a pretty good handle on risk as well. Because a lot of people, they'll shy away from risk. But it sounds to me like rather than seeing the downside, you're more apt to see the upside of an opportunity.
As I said, Gary, never losses, only lessons. And I think that is another critical feature of successful people, is their relationship to failure. Failure will happen. Mm-hmm. Rather than spending all of our valuable time and energy trying to avoid failure happens, great. That's part of the learning process. You look at people like, and if you've read the stories of Edison or even Colonel Saunders, I mean, I've seen the story about him. He was turned down over 900 times.
Yeah.
With his recipe for fried chicken before somebody would actually market it and put it out there. And so that's just an example. In Japan, it took Honda. It took the Second World War and a gas crisis before his Honda Cub became mainstream in Japan. And that was invented in the 1930s, like maybe even 1920s, but it took 15 years of him trying unsuccessfully until there was a war, and then there was no gas, and all of a sudden, wow, we can go drive for a week on a half gallon of gas with this little Honda Cub, and that's the basis of the Honda Motors empire.
Really?
It's quite a fascinating story. And again, it's all about perseverance, stickability, relationship to failure, not giving up. It's all part of the same ball.
Yeah. That kind of brings to mind biographies. Like the bookstores or the libraries are full of biographies of successful people. And if you go to the library, they're free. And all it takes is a little bit of time for you to read through a successful person's biography, excuse me, to learn that it wasn't all roses for them either, that they had to be persistent and carry on. John, is there a quote that somebody said that inspires you or has inspired you in the past?
Yes, and the first one that comes to mind, and I think, I don't know if it was his originally, but I read it in a book from somebody by the name of Zig Ziglar, who you may be familiar with.
Yeah.
That he said the best way to be successful in life is to help as many other people as you can to be successful in life.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that's certainly been a guiding principle for me, is that I help enough other people along the way in whatever capacity, not just business, but in life, that always will come back in terms of, and my own success. But it makes me feel good in the moment. I don't do it necessarily because I want to be successful. It's just, you feel good when you help somebody else. I think that's almost a fundamental human characteristic. Yeah. So there's that immediate gratification. But it always seems to work out that way. The more people that I can help in their success, the more successful I become, not just financially, but in life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, John, we touched on this a little bit because you kind of talked about how you view failure. But, in life, there's always ups and downs. So how do you view adversity when something negative happens in your life, whether it's personal or business? How do you view that and turn it into a positive?
And it all begins between my years and my thoughts and attitudes about it. It's my relationship to failure, or my relationship to something that is a quote negative perceived event.
Mm-hmm.
And they happen all the time in small ways and big ways every day from my truck wouldn't start the other day or something like that. Okay, that's a negative. And what am I? Okay, so I could sit there and complain about that for the rest of the day, but that ain't going to get me anywhere. It's like, okay, so what's the solution? So just focus not on the problem, but on the solution. And very importantly, it's the self-talk I have with myself about my relationship to failure. Because I could easily spiral into bad, wrong, and I'm not good enough, and all that stuff, and victimhood. And okay, that just doesn't get me too far. So it's about the logic to me is inescapable. If we can create, because we are creating those negative thoughts, then okay, well, why don't we create different thoughts that will have a different result? And so, okay, so what do? So truck breaks down. I got my service guy. I call him. We either can fix it, or he can talk me through it, or get it going, or I call OnStar, or if I have to, then okay, we take whatever action. I have to get it towed, or I have to drive it in, whatever, we get it fixed. And so the self-talk is really important, because otherwise we just go on into that downward spiral. That's an easy one to go down. That's the world is doing this to me, versus no, there's just something that happened. It's my relationship to what happened and what I tell myself about what happened. So looking for the solution, and also, as I said before, there's never losses. There's only lessons. So what can I learn from this? Well, okay, maybe if I would have done this ahead of time, I wouldn't have had that breakdown with my truck. So if I had this maintenance issue that I wasn't aware of or had overlooked, okay, so then I can learn something going forward about how to take care of it. Or if the problem happens again and there's a simple fix, I know exactly what to do. So what can I learn from it? So my relationship to the event, and then what can I learn? What wisdom is there that I can learn from what's happened?
Okay. Now, you mentioned Zig Ziglar just a few minutes ago. And the way you phrase things, John, and I mean, you credited your dad and some of your university professors for how you think in life. But where did you learn to self-talk from a positive perspective when it seems like self-talk from a negative perspective is the easier way? Like, did you do a lot of reading, or where did you get ideas from?
Yeah, and although some of it reading, yeah, but I think more importantly, I had an opportunity to take part in a lot of personal growth and development courses decades ago, before it was really mainstream. And at one point, I even led personal development programs for a major international educational organization. And so, there's, I think it was Walt Whitman said that those who dare to teach must never cease to learn. And if you really want to learn something, just become the so-called teacher, or whatever you're going to call yourself, program facilitator. You really have to learn this stuff. So it's, I would say, primarily experientially learned. And and there's some reading along the way, but and it's a never-ending process. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the more that I've learned in life, the more I've discovered that I don't know. And so it's I think that's another trait, coming back to qualities of successful people. They're always learning, and they always have a very open mind to learning something new. They don't get locked into doing things a particular way. And I just this past summer, I spent a week at the Cape Cod Institute, just outside of Boston, in a training program, a week-long training program focused exclusively on creating safe communications, but not communications from the perspective of speaking, but from the perspective of listening. And it was that's where a lot of my own personal growth and development has gone in the last several years. Is not going to the tax conferences and all of those sorts of things, although I still do some of that just to keep up to speed. But much more importantly, because the communication side is so important, particularly with my clients, because it really doesn't matter, Gary, the extent to which you've got all these beautiful, sophisticated estate and tax plans and everything is all set up. If you haven't addressed the fundamental issues in the terms of the dynamics of what's going on inside of wealthy families, so often the whole thing is built in a house of cards and it falls apart. Doesn't matter what agreements or documents you got, the whole thing just falls apart. And the fundamental basis of that falling apart is lack of communication. Mm-hmm. So the what I learned, for example, over the past summer is that, and it was quite fascinating. It's actually based on quantum physics that the act of, and this is the famous experiment they did at Princeton, and it's been proved in a number of contexts since then, the act of observing something will actually change what's being observed. In the same context, the act of how you and I listen to somebody else can actually change how that other person shows up.
Really?
It's fascinating, and it's been proven that there's something called the still face experiment that they did at MIT that I won't go into, but it's sourced in quantum physics, and the science is well documented behind this. But if you think about that for a minute, not what I say, but how I listen to you right now can actually alter the way that you're going to show up.
The way that I'm going to show up, or you?
Yep. No, the way that you're going to show up.
Okay.
Let me give you, Einstein talked about this too. If you've ever read books, he said that if you view the world as a threatening place, what will show up in your life every day are threats. Mm-hmm. You will show up as a threat. That's the energy, without going into the details of quantum physics, the energy that I'm conveying that's going to cause you to act that way. Even if you're normally not a threatening person, you'll actually start to show up that way.
Really? Okay.
And he said, if you view the world, conversely, he said, if you view the world as a safe place, then what will show up around you are safe people and safety.
Okay, so you attract to yourself what you give off.
Absolutely, and it's very much at an energetic level.
Yeah,
that's all quantum physics. It's all about energy.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people.
If you take that and apply it to clients, and so much of the work I now do with families is, we do a lot of work setting up family boards and family office structures. It's all about communication. It's all about facilitating safe communications between business partners, family members, that whole domain. That's really where the difference is made in working with successful business owners and wealthy families.
Yeah, that's the thing. If there's an issue between two family members that hasn't been resolved, you have to resolve that before you can move forward. I take it.
Well, let me give you an example. I spend most of my day talking to business owners, talking to people in wealthy families. And at the beginning of the process, I have a few questions that I ask. I usually don't have to say very much. I just like to ask just a few questions. And one of the first questions I ask when we're talking about working with the family and setting up their planning is, who might the disruptors be? And I can't tell you how many times, Gary, I ask that question and there's about 2 hours of conversation that ensues and I don't have to say anything else.
Oh,
very often there is a potential or current disruptor, whether it's an estranged family member, an ex-partner, or even current partner of a family member. There are a number of different places disruptors can show up. But that's an example of unless and until you deal with those people ahead of time and find ways through safe communication to either heal the wound or minimize the impact of their disruption, anything else you do is going to fall apart because they're going to disrupt it.
Yeah. And there's always going to be that wall, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, John, when you look at your life, what are there 3 habits that you habitually do that you think are successful that anybody else could do?
That's a really good question. I think I'm just going to go just with the first things that come into my mind, because that's usually I find that the ones that are probably most authentic. The first thing is, how do you talk to yourself? Who are you about the business of you? Who are you about the business of you? Do you take care of yourself? I mean, I've become, I want to say almost addicted to, but it's just very, very preoccupied with my self-talk and taking care of myself, whether that's in a physical sense of I spend a lot of time working out and yoga and Pilates and meditation and have a great meditation practice. I think that's a real game changer in terms of self-talk. And attending, like I did this past summer, the week long in Cape Cod, learning about ways that I can become the best version of myself and how to talk to myself when something doesn't go well or there's a speed bump or a roadblock in the way. And so diet and nutrition and sleep, all those things. I mean, so taking care of myself across all the different physical, psychological, emotional aspects. I think that's so important, because if we allow ourselves to break down mentally, physically, psychologically, what else is possible? You become very limited. And so I think that's a really important habit. And then the other thing is this may sound, I don't know, kind of strange, but I don't know, it's been decades. I carry around a little handheld recorder, not my phone or anything, just a separate, in fact, it's sitting right here in my desk. This little handheld recorder. And of course, there it is. And throughout the day, in the middle of the night, like each day, I'll maybe record 15 or 20 things in there. They'll just come to me randomly, except there's no accidents, there's no randomness. There's a message coming to me for a reason about something. So that's, in one sense, one of my best friends. So I just record that message on there. And then I don't have to think about it, trying to remember it or go somewhere to write it. I have 2 of them, in case one breaks down or I leave one at home, I have one in my vehicle. So I have it with me 24/7. And it clears it out of my head, whether it's something I have to record because, there's something I wanted to talk about on the podcast with Gary. So I'm going to record that, and then I'll forget about it and I'll play it back. Maybe usually once a day I go through and clear off the recordings and then put them in the appropriate places. But I found that's been a real game changer from 2 aspects. One is I don't forget things that come into my that I think about. Let's manage our thoughts in a positive way, because if we have thousands of thoughts that come in a day, there's a lot of really good ones, but if we don't do something about them, they're gone. They disappear. Yes. I mean, I think the science on it is about the average length of retention is about 10 seconds in the thought you have, and then there's the next thought. So if you don't record it, you're not going to have it. And then the second thing it does, though, it frees up headspace.
Yeah.
there was something I wanted to write down about that file, or there was something something I had to do, or something over here, or something with my daughter, whatever it was. Forget. And so I free up all the headspace that goes into trying to remember something. So that's certainly another one that maybe sound kind of quirky, but you know what? It works for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent idea, because how many times?
And the third habit, sorry to answer back to your question, the three of them I think you asked for, is for sure seeking advice and direction. I have so many coaches. I have coaches for medical and different aspects of medical, and yoga and Pilates people, and a naturopath and a doctor, and a psychologist, and business coaches and life coaches. I just for everything.
Mm-hmm.
If I think about it, there's literally dozens of people that I can just, just yesterday, I called my physiotherapist, and of course he's busy because he's working with patients, but he always calls me back the same day. And I question about, okay, well, this is happening. What do you think? And so I don't have to book an appointment 2 weeks out. That's the relationship we have, because I've been working with him since trees were little, and so he's on speed dial anyway, and he's great. And so, having those kinds of resources. And so I think building up, if you will, a database of coaches and mentors in all different areas of your life is fundamentally important. So those are the three that come to mind, Gary.
Okay. So positive self-talk, recording or some device that you don't forget your thoughts, and then having that a positive network, I guess, or coaches, mentors. So, okay. Those are excellent. John, do you do you belong to a mastermind? Are you familiar with that?
I've been involved in, not currently. It's a short answer. I'm in some other groups and doing some other things a little bit different. But yes, at one point I was involved years ago with Mastermind, but then I grew into some other areas and pursued some different directions. And it's a great program. There's nothing wrong with it. I just I went in a slightly different direction from it.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your thoughts on business coaches or life coaches, but it sounds like you're definitely in favor of somebody having a coach of some sort.
All in for all coaches, not just a coach, but as many coaches as you can get for all. Think of them as the areas of your life. Coaches for your physical well-being, coaches for your mental, psychological, spiritual well-being, coaches for your business success, coaches for your relationship success. There's a whole nother branch of training and development that I've been working on in terms of relationship with my partner, and something it's based out of Safe Conversations. But in any event, that's all, because it's okay to work on yourself and work on myself to a point, but for the most part, we live in a world where we're in relationships all the time with other people. So working on ourselves is fine, but it's a whole different energy that takes place as soon as I'm talking to you, or I'm talking to a group, or I'm talking to another person. And it's for me at least, the experience of the training and development required in that area is substantially different than just working on myself. Working on myself only gets me so far. It might get me to sitting on a rock on top of a mountain, which I've done, but it doesn't get me too far in terms of being out in the world. And if I'm going to be out in the world and dealing every day in relationship with other people, that takes something beyond just the work I'm doing on myself.
Right. Okay, just a couple of quick questions in closing. But John, do you have a vision for yourself? Like, do you know where you want your life to go over the next 20 years?
Yes, and it may be a little different than what, I don't know what you're expecting, but it's not about, there are some specific measurables, but I know inside of me what's driving me forward is fulfilling my purpose and my destiny, which is all about making a difference in the lives of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, become me, doing the work on me, becoming the best version of myself that I can possibly be. And that's an ongoing work in progress, because there's always some area to make better, but then making a difference in the lives of other people,
mm-hmm.
whatever form that takes. But I'm very clear about that. That's been my destiny for a long time and continues to be.
Okay.
And then, how I was going to say, and how I'm finding now that I can really leverage on that is working with other people who then make difference in the lives of the people in their lives. So coaching the coaches and making a difference with thought leaders and working with people in that domain is where I can really amplify, rather than just making a difference with one person. I'm then making a difference with a whole bunch of other people at the same time.
Right. Okay. And I think that's hugely important, because my final question is really for a financial advisor who may be a certified financial planner, might have other, CLU degrees behind. They may know the technical aspects of their job, but to me, it sounds like somebody like yourself working with them to work on themselves, on their communication, on their thought process is hugely important as well. So,
yes, and the add-on to that, working on their own self-talk or thought process, but then also working on their communication with other people, mm-hmm. and how they relate to them.
Mm-hmm. So, sorry, I have one more question then. How important is it for a financial advisor to have that kind of conversation with their clients, or does that kind of...
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. Here's the thing, Gary, and I don't know how often you've seen it, but I see it all the time, and I hear it all the time when you're in meetings with other advisors, and it's not just financial advisors, it's accountants, lawyers, everybody else. How often do you hear people say, "Oh, well, yeah, we got to deal with the soft issues. We got to deal with the soft issues." Then they go into and launch into the legal or the tax or the insurance or the accounting. Well, guess what? Nobody ever actually gets to the soft issues.
Mm-hmm.
So the question becomes, who is charged with responsibility for dealing with the soft issues? And very importantly, what are their qualifications for that job? That's what will move the needle from that statistic I quoted at the beginning of our talk today. About 80% of people, successful business owners, not having a formal plan.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is, for the most part, those, quote, soft issues have not been addressed or adequately addressed. That's mm-hmm. why. That's the single most important reason why the needle has not moved for decades on that 80% number. And here's an interesting one. Financial advisors, and there's a lot of research that's been done on that, and a very recent study came out from IFB that 90%, not 80, but 90% of financial advisors have no formal plan for transition exit
mm-hmm.
from their business. So mm-hmm. let's correlate those two. So 90% of the advisors don't have a plan. Maybe it's no accident that 80% of their clients don't have a plan.
That's right.
It's kind of like trying to sell somebody insurance, but I don't have any. Mm-hmm. I don't have any insurance, but I'm going to sell you some.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a plan. And so they're going to try to tell their clients to get a plan. Yeah, there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, I could talk to you all day about success and about your life, because I find you and your life to be very fascinating and very insightful. But we're going to have to cut it off here because you have other things to do as well. So I want to thank you, John, for being our guest today and for providing such great value and insight. It is hugely appreciated. John, how can our audience get in touch with you?
So there's the simplest way is you can just go to our website at wealthstrategy.ca, and there's all kinds of information, including my contact information there. You can reach out to me by email directly at taxwiz@shaw.ca, which is TAXWIZ. Those are probably the two easiest ways to contact me. And thank you, Gary. And again, this is all inside of fulfilling my purpose in terms of the opportunity to make a difference to anybody else who might be listening to this. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. And I want to thank our sponsor, Customplan Financial Advisors. Customplan is an award-winning MGA providing exceptional resources and support to the independent financial advisor. Please visit their website at customplanfinancial.com. This podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and at financialpodcast.ca. To be notified when new podcasts are available, please subscribe by visiting financialpodcast.ca. If you have an idea or a topic or know of someone who would make a great guest, please send an email to contact@financialpodcast.ca or info@financialpodcast.ca. We'd also love to receive your feedback. Thank you again, John, and to everyone else, have a fabulous day.
The views expressed here are those of the participants and not those of Customplan Financial Advisors, Inc., its affiliates, or subsidiaries. This is not intended to serve as a complete analysis of every material fact regarding any company, industry, or security. This presentation may contain forward-looking statements. Investors are cautioned not to place undue reliance on such statements, as actual results could vary. This site and podcasts are for general information purposes only and does not constitute investment advice and is not intended as an endorsement of any specific investment product or service. Individual investors should consult with an investment professional about their personal situation. Past performance is not indicative of future results. If you are unsure about what is the best course of action for you in your financial planning, then we suggest you consult a fee-based independent financial advisor or get in touch with us to discuss your individual situation. Our phone number is 604-687-7773.